What is good, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk about editing your film scans digitally in Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever you want. The question is, should you be editing your negative scans in your digital form? And I think there's kind of two answers, two sides of the equation that you're going to encounter. One is people saying, no, you shouldn't. And those are quote unquote like the purists. Then on the other side, you've got people saying it's art, do whatever you want. Which one is right? Well, of course, that's up to you to decide. But my thoughts are, I don't think the purist argument really makes sense. And then in terms of the, it's art, do whatever you want. I do agree with that, but I find that I don't want the pressure of having to really push my images a ton in digital, because I actually enjoy the fact that with analog, you kind of don't have to feel that pressure. So let me explain. First of all, in terms of purity, I just don't think this idea that editing images is not purity. I don't think that makes sense. And there's kind of one major reason why. And that is that when you edit your images in digital, those edits actually are based off of a lot of the analog processes that have existed over time. So a couple things that you do when you're editing your images in a digital program. First and foremost is a lot of people do dodging and burning. And dodging and burning is one of the best techniques you can do in the analog darkroom to edit your images. You can add all kinds of intrigue and selective attention and all that just by dodging and burning your images. So if you do that in your digital form, that's 100% related to the analog form. It's the same concept. So, there's nothing impure about that. The other thing you can do in digital that you definitely can do in analog as well is actually edit the colors on your images. I do a lot of color printing, as you know, and I made a print right here of this particular image that I want to talk about. This is the one I posted on Instagram, as you can see right here, and I basically teed off this conversation about to edit or not to edit. And in this image right here with the colors, when you do color printing, editing colors is basically the entire process, because you have to get your exposure, of course, and then once you get your exposure, you then have to see if the colors that your enlarger settings are producing are the colors that you want. And I never print an image without having to go through at least one round of color correction. So that's just guaranteed in the analog process. And therefore, if you do it in your digital process, you're doing absolutely nothing that's quote unquote impure. For example, if you get a scan from the lab, they've chosen the colors that they think should represent your image. And you are 100% entitled to go ahead and edit those colors in digital. Again, because, you can do whatever you want. But also, if you think about this purity argument, that matches what you did in analog. So if I do it in analog, then you definitely should be doing it in digital. Okay, so that's those two things. The third thing that people often do in digital that theoretically resembles analog is actually, selective healing and cloning. And actually not cloning, because cloning implies like literally recreating part of an image. And that's something you can't really do in analog, because otherwise you'd be literally creating art. What you can do, though, is selectively clean up your prints. So, for example, this print again that I showed you, there's a bunch of specks here. And these specks are actually on the negative. I think my negative was clean, but I think what's happening here is actually the negative is kind of scratched or damaged. I'm not sure what happened. I'll have to re-examine. But ultimately, those white specks that you see on the print, those can be cleaned up fairly easily in terms of analog process. I don't do it because it involves literally painting. You get a little thin paintbrush, you mix up the color that you think matches, and then you lightly go over the specific parts of the image. You can do that in analog. People have done that a lot over time. So if you want to do that in Photoshop, again, there's no break there. It's the same exact thing, except one is digital versus one is analog. So this idea of impurity, just again, I don't think it makes sense. If you, just kind of post your images straight from the scans from the lab, that's already quote unquote impure, because I guarantee you the lab chose colors for you. The process of taking a negative from a negative into a digital positive involves quote unquote editing, whether it's the computer, whether it's a human at the lab, or whether it's yourself using Negative Lab Pro. All of that equals editing. So this purity thing, let's leave it behind. But on the other side, you've got those that say do absolutely whatever you want. And I don't think I subscribe to that camp either. And it's not because I don't think that should be allowed. It's just that I actually enjoy kind of the feeling of creating images with film photography and not having to stress or worry or like spend all these hours, quote unquote, editing my images. Of course, I'll do all the base editing stuff that's required when you scan and when you color convert. Then I'll clean up images here and there by, removing these scratches, for example, that I mentioned. And of course, a light color correction as well. But all of that takes me maybe a minute or two, not that long. I don't like the idea of having to spend time doing half an hour edits per single image, the way that I used to do when I was shooting digital. When you shoot digital only, especially if you shoot raw, you're getting these raw files, and the expectation is that you're going to take that file and then work it and do a bunch of stuff to it to get it to be, a usable final product. With film, you don't really think about it that way. For me, with film, it's more about kind of just refining the image lightly to, make it a final product. Whereas when you shoot a raw file on digital, that's just your starting point, and it is definitely expected that you're going to go beyond that. So, again, it's art. Do whatever you want. I totally agree with the idea of that and the freedom of it. But for me personally, I don't like that pressure, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy film photography, because I feel like that pressure is not really part of the equation. So, just like when I'm printing, I print it to my satisfaction, and then I'm done. I'm not gonna sit there and make 30 different prints with every single color combination, inspect each one, and then, create a final print or create multiple versions of a final print. That's a lot of paper to waste, but also there's a lot of time. And I'm just, again, I don't like that pressure. I don't need it, and I don't enjoy it. So ultimately, long story short, you want to edit your images, go ahead and edit your images. Don't let anybody stop you. And if you're not editing your images, quote unquote, first of all, you're wrong. You are editing your images. But second of all, maybe push it just a little bit further, because you might actually like the results that you get from that extra minute or two that you spend changing some colors up and cleaning some things up. I think it'll actually make a nice difference, and I think you might be surprised with how much you enjoy the secondary output after making some of those changes. Talk to me in the comments. Do y'all edit your images? A lot of people on Instagram seem to say the answer is yes. But then I've definitely gotten a few people saying no, that they kind of like to keep it pure, let's say. So talk to me in the comments and let me know what your best argument is for either one. All right, y'all. That's what I got for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please go ahead and, of course, like the video. And until the next one, y'all, I'm out.
That is a sick camera.
Throwback. All right, that's it. All right, that's enough. I mean, we like hugged the sleeping giant there, so whatever the fuck it's called.